we thought we better look at our own homes and get a proper refresher on fire hazard, fire safety. And so Doug Sinclair is in studio with us. He's the Fire Public Education Coordinator with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So people think they're ready in their homes, right? You think, I don't need, I know what I'm doing. I'm safe. But then that adrenaline kicks in, stress can kick in if there's actually smoke or a fire in your home. How should you be ready so that doesn't take over and you actually can execute your escape plan, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a good word. Execute escape plans. Having an escape plan, having a plan in place is essential. So talking about it, reviewing it, as monotonous as it might sound, a lot of times we think in our own homes nothing's going to happen. If something does happen, there's smoke. I can smell it. I can get out. I have an exit plan. I know my home inside and out. But when there's smoke conditions and there's alarms going off and there's a little bit of heat, things change dramatically. So having the plan, reviewing it, and then executing and practicing the plan is very essential.
Are you supposed? Say you smell smoke and you see something significant. Should you just grab each other and run out of the house right away? Maybe that sounds silly, but that's an honest question because some people will be like, "I can take care of it. I can take care of it." When do you turn your attention to we have to get out of here and not actually try to take care of whatever it is?
I don't think that's a silly question at all. That's exactly what we should be doing. And we refer this in public education with the department when we talk to kids in school because they practice fire drills 10 times a year, and they're so well versed on the practice part in the school. They know what to do, and we've talked about this before, where 400 to 600 kids can do a drill in a minute and a half. In a building, in a rather large building. Mm-hmm. In our own homes, we do this in school. We go home, we don't practice that plan. Then something happens and things get off kilter a little bit. So practicing the plan and going over it. But just as you say, it's time to get out. We hear an alarm. If we all execute this plan and we get to a safe meeting place, then everything should be fine. If we're responding to alarms, we have proper working alarms.
What worries you about this, Doug? Because I think to myself, so often when there's an emergency now, I'm holding up my phone for the radio listeners. Often people will look to this to text or tell somebody before they kind of maybe do something physically. How much of a concern is that?
It's a little bit of a concern. We talk to people who work in offices and things like that in buildings where they're grabbing their keys and their phones and their devices and computers and all kinds of things. And the reality is when there's an alarm sounding, we want to be up to spring into action right away because time is of the essence. Things happen so quickly with smoke and fire conditions that rooms can fill up with smoke in less than a minute and a half. So, and when those conditions happen, they're unbearable. Sometimes they're unsurvivable.
What should you do if your house is on fire then? Like what actually you're in the house, let's say. I understand everyone's supposed to stay low.
Yeah, stay low and go is what we want to do. And obviously, heat and smoke rise. So we want to stay under the smoke. But, we always say this, again, especially when we're talking to members of the public, is that if you have working smoke alarms in place and you have a plan, you hopefully don't have to get to that point. And I know after the first practice, things get a lot better. So if you do a second and third practice in your home or wherever it is you are, in your residence or your workplace, that plan basically gets a little more simpler, I guess, so to speak. Yeah.
And what are the critical points of that? Is it knowing where you're meeting or knowing which window you're going to go out? And if that window's blocked, which other one? Like it's that detailed, right?
Yeah. Another great question. Anywhere if we're sleeping in your sleeping quarters, wherever it is you are, that you're asleep, you should have 2 ways out of every room. So that's something you have to talk about in your plan. A window, a doorway, things like that. Could you access your window? And we get this a lot from school-age children. What if I live on the 7th floor of a high-rise, for example, and I have, with my window, how am I going to get in my window? That's to basically signal fire crews. If I could open my window, I could even push my screen out if I'm able to do so. I could signal crews. They know exactly where you are. If I live in a house or a residence where I could access the window, that's very important that I can escape through the window or the door. So I have 2 ways out of every room.
You can't practice whether or not the window will break. I always wonder about that. If it won't go up or if you can't push it out so you kind of have to really look around your home and think about what the specifics of your home are.
Absolutely. That's part of the plan, right? A lot of times we just talk about the plan, but if you can actually physically go around, especially if you got children, I find that if you can, if you have young children, are they able to just maybe unlatch a window and can they slide it open or can they lift it open and things like that?
Now, this is no judgment, Doug, on any of the heroes we've covered in the past at all. But if you have made it out, should you go back in?
Absolutely not. And I know it's a difficult question because there's so much at stake with whoever's
Yeah.
in the home or things like pets. But you mentioned the phone thing, like, especially things like devices that are so replaceable. Yeah, we have our phones, and
People go back in for stuff.
yeah, they do. They go back in for things, and we don't want them to do that. If you have a working smoke alarm or working smoke alarms in your home, and you have a plan, like, and you mentioned a safe meeting place, that's very essential. That if we have the plan, our alarms are going off. It could be 3 a.m. and actual smoke conditions arise. We get to our meeting place. We know we have accountability. We know what's happening. We can get out safely, not have to go back in for devices or pets or even people.
It's interesting because as somebody was sharing with me at one point that there was sort of a fire. I think it was in a larger environment like a school, but before pulling the fire alarm, the kid actually went to tell sort of an adult. So you kind of have to reprogram like the fire alarm messages as well and what that means, because often the first thing to think of would be to go to somebody who could help you.
Absolutely. And there's a lot, things change. We talk about a plan where there's nothing happening. There's no smoke. There's not, it's a what if situation. And again, when we mentioned this earlier, that when if there's smoke conditions or fire conditions, that changes your plan of action or your thought process. And that's why if we don't practice that plan, we don't lay it out, we don't talk about those things, we don't test our alarms, and something does happen, that it really throws your thinking process
So that won't
off.
kick in when you're in that stress moment.
Exactly. The more you practice, the better things become.
All right, space heaters, we know we're supposed to plug them into a wall and a dedicated outlet. I know lights, we're not supposed to have extension cords like going all over the place. But you still see people wrapping a damaged cord with electrical tape, and why not? Why not?
Oh, again, those things can short out, like overloaded, power bars, overloaded outlets, things like that. And we have more, like you mentioned, cell phones. We have so many more devices nowadays with laptops and computers and whatnot, and phones and things like that. And for overloading those things, they could have a tendency to create electrical fires.
What does overloaded mean? Because people buy those outlet things that go over, especially in an old house. You put it into the major thing in the house, your outlet, and it gives you 4 different outlets, maybe 6 different outlets. Is that not okay?
No, if you have a power bar with 4 outlets, that's fine. But there's people who have extensions off of those outlets, right? That you can have like a double extension, or you can have an extra extension cord. Now you got 2 or 3. So if you have a power bar, for example, with 4 outlets, and you have 6 or 7 devices plugged in, that means you're overloaded.
Thank you very much for coming in. As I said, we're ahead of candle season, so we're all thinking about these things, and we should be. So appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Doug Sinclair's the Fire Public Education Coordinator with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.